Hey, what's going on, folks? Welcome back to the Graphic Design is Fun podcast. My name's Dan. Today, things are getting scientific. Today, we are chatting with Nuria Melisa Morales Garcia, founder of ScienceGraphicDesign.com, which is a great domain name, by the way. Love a good domain name. So here's the deal. Dr. Melisa, I should say, comes from the world of science, the world of academia. She studied biology and paleontology. She has a PhD in paleontology and somehow found her way into basically running a design studio, but focusing on science-related things: posters, infographics, illustrations, animations, data visualization, all kinds of beautiful work, and just kind of something different that I hadn't really seen someone focusing on like this science niche before. I now realize that there's actually lots of science-centric designers and illustrators out there. But yeah, I don't know. I just thought it was very cool and, kind of like an unsung hero of design type of thing that's maybe, not as sexy as like rebranding some tech company or whatever, but it's like the bread and butter design that makes the world go round. And yeah, so I was really excited that Melisa was down to chat. We talked about how she went from being a scientist to a graphic designer, how she got her first clients, her first commissions. We talked actually at the time she was in the process of trying to hire some designers to come work with her. And just looking at her website now, it appears she has brought on 2 new designers to the team at ScienceGraphicDesign.com, which is pretty cool. She seems to really be killing it. Yeah, man, she's awesome. Hope you enjoyed the episode. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and family and loved ones. And without further ado, Dr. Nuria Melisa Morales Garcia, PhD. Enjoy. All right, Melisa, thank you for coming on the podcast. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really excited to be here.
So I want to tell you how I found your website in the first place, because it was just kind of random. I wasn't searching for science graphic design related things. I just found this website called Ko-fi. Ko-fi, I think that's how it's pronounced.
Yeah.
And I don't know how I ended up on Ko-fi, but it's kind of like Patreon or like one of these websites where you can like pay or like support creative people. And I just typed in graphic design just for fun, just to see what came up. And yours was the first one. And I was like, oh, what is this? Science graphic design.
Really?
And then I just went down the rabbit hole and like, yeah, went through your whole website and everything. And yeah, I just thought it was so cool. And it's like a specific niche that I haven't actually really seen people doing. I mean, I realize now that it's a big thing. Like science needs graphic design, obviously, but it's just something I hadn't really thought about. So
That's really interesting. I'm always curious as to how people find me. I think that a lot of the time people find me through Twitter because academics are very active on Twitter. But yeah, I didn't know that. I mean, it's really cool how you find me.
yeah, like do you still use Ko-fi?
Um, I should use it more. I've just been really busy lately, so I haven't had a lot of time for posting stuff in social media. I went through like a phase that every week I was posting like a video on how to do something related to graphic design, and I would post it in Instagram, Twitter, and yeah, in Ko-fi as well. But yeah, I haven't done it in a while. But yeah, maybe I'll get back to it.
All right, so let's talk about, I guess, or let's start with like your background. You're born in Mexico, and and where in Mexico are you from?
I'm from a city near Mexico City, but I don't think anyone else, but it's called Pachuca.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I don't know that, but and then did you move to the UK for school?
Yeah, I did my undergrad in Mexico and master's and PhD in the UK.
What did you study? What did you go to school for?
So I did my undergrad in biology, and then I did my master's and my PhD in paleontology.
And just to be clear, paleontology is what exactly?
Is the study of extinct organisms. I in particular studied the mammals that lived at the same time as dinosaurs. Um,
Wow.
Everyone always thinks that I studied dinosaurs, but I didn't. But yeah, just these teensy little creatures that lived a very long time ago.
Okay, the mammals that lived at the same time as dinosaurs. And is that because I saw something on your website, Mesozoic mammals?
Hmm.
That's what that
Yeah,
word means?
exactly.
Okay. Interesting, interesting. So what brought you to study that specifically? Like, was that just something you were particularly interested in?
Um, I was always interested in well, first of all, I love biology. But specifically, I really love mammals. And then when I was in my undergrad, I always thought I was gonna study like genetics or molecular biology or something, very like lab intensive like that. But then one of my teachers was a paleontologist, and I had a chance to do a research project with him. And then I liked it so much that I was like, yes, I'm gonna be an academic, and I am going to study paleontology, mammals in particular. Um, so I've just done a few research projects on very different groups of mammals. And yeah, I mean, I guess that's very different from graphic design. But yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah. Okay. And we'll get to graphic design, of course, but I'm just curious, like, so what does doing research on extinct mammals look like? Like, how does one conduct research on extinct mammals?
It can be all sorts of different things. For my undergrad, I was literally taking out, the bones of mastodons. They're like relatives of elephants and mammoths. And I would just describe them, measure them, photograph them. Um, and then for my master's, I was measuring a bunch of camel bones that lived in North America a long time ago. So, a lot of like measuring extinct animals and then comparing them with modern animals so that
Okay.
you can find similarities between the two of them and make inferences on, for example, what these animals were eating, what environments. And then by the time I got to my PhD, I was actually making 3D models of fossils and analyzing them using engineering techniques um, to analyze how they were functioning. So I was looking at the jaws of mammals, and if you analyze how they function, you can be like, oh, this animal had a jaw strong enough to eat meat, but this one didn't, so it was probably eating insects or something like that.
Huh. That's fascinating. Wow. I feel like I could talk. I have so many questions. Like, why did these animals go extinct and not others?
Yeah, well, that's like the question all paleontologists ask themselves all the
Oh,
time,
okay.
right? Where do these animals go extinct? I mean, Mesozoic mammals lived for a very, very, very long time. So, animals just go extinct sometimes because they don't have the resources they need. The environment changes, or a lot of Mesozoic mammals died at the same time as the dinosaurs did with the asteroid impact.
Right.
But some of them survived, and they gave rise to us and to all of the mammals that you see today. So yeah, it's really a big number of reasons.
That's super cool. Wow. Um, yeah, just stuff you to eat or that I don't really think about, but it's really fascinating. I'll have to look through your papers and because
Yeah.
no, that's really cool. Okay, so I mean, I guess the question or the reason we're chatting today. Now you're a professional graphic designer. That's fair to
Mhm.
say? How how did that come about? How did you go from this science background to working in graphic design?
Yeah, for sure. So in academia, in science, we always have to make graphics of all sorts. We have to make figures for papers, we have to make posters for conferences, we have to make presentations. And I found when I was studying my master's and PhD that making the figures was always my favorite, well, one of my favorite parts of, the whole thing. And I used to think that it would be so cool if there was actually a job in which they gave me money to do figures. But it never really crossed my mind that that was an actual job and that people would actually give me money to make their graphics. So I was coming to the end of my PhD. This was at the start of the pandemic. And there is a life sciences graphics online platform called BioRender. They make all sorts of really, really cool figures for science. And they hosted a contest on making graphical abstracts. And I was like, yeah, I guess like I could do this.
Sorry, what's a
You know.
graphical abstract?
Okay, so a graphical abstract is a graphic summary of a paper, of a research paper. So they're becoming more and more common in science in recent years. So a paper is structured of different parts. The main one is the abstract, which is a text summary of the whole thing. And recently, people came up with a graphical abstract. So it's just an image that
Got it.
shows what's going on in the paper. So yeah, BioRender hosts this graphical abstract contest, and I decided to join. And one of they had like different categories for prizes and stuff, and one of them was the that people could vote for you, and the one with the most votes would win something, right? So I started sharing the graphical abstracts that I made on Twitter. People really seem to like them. And yeah, I mean, the contest aside, a few weeks or months later, one of my friends that saw one of the abstracts that I made for the competition emails me and goes like, "Hey, do you know that you could make a couple of graphical abstracts for me for a paper that I'm about to publish, and I will pay you some money." And I was like, at that point, I was like, so you want me to make the thing that I love making, and on top of everything, you want to give me money? Like, it's just like, I was like so amazed at the whole concept. And then, I made the graphics for him, and then I shared them on Twitter. And then just like every so often, someone would contact me to make graphics for them. And at some point I decided, like I need a website, and I'm actually going to actively start offering my services as a graphics designer. So I did. And it's been like two-ish years since I did that. And I'm very lucky that people are still contacting me to make graphics for them for science. So the job that I thought someone had to make up and give me, I actually could just do it myself, freelance. And yeah, people responded, and here I am.
That's awesome. I love that. And was that while you were doing a PhD? Like I'm trying to get the timeline straight. Like you've completed a PhD at this point.
Really?
But was this while you were still at school or after?
I was in the very last months of my PhD.
Okay.
So I was just writing up my thesis, and I had a teensy bit of time on the side. Also, we were in a lockdown, so it's not like I could go outside and
Oh
do
yeah,
it.
this is like during COVID. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, in the first few months, it was like one commission a month.
Right.
Very, very small commissions. So it wasn't taking up that much of my time. It wasn't until I probably finished my PhD and then I didn't have anything else to do that I was like, okay, it's gonna be my full-time work, my full-time job. Um, so yeah, it's just been it started from something very small, and now I actually do have work all the time.
Amazing. Um, and so is that the plan to just continue as as a designer, or will you ever return to academia or in like sort of more formal science?
I am actually in academia right now. I am a postdoc um, in the same department, but I am only part-time.
Oh, okay.
Um, in the time that I was in academia, I managed to grow my business quite a lot, and I absolutely love it, and I want to keep doing it forever if I can. So I'm trying to juggle both. I'm very recently, well, I'm actually, as we speak, I am in the process of interviewing people so that they join my team as graphic designers and we can continue to grow the business.
Oh yeah, I saw you posting that you're hiring. That's cool. That's pretty exciting. That's big
Yeah,
actually.
yeah, it is. It is really, really exciting. I'm so thankful that people trust me enough with their very important research. Uh, you know, that I get to communicate it via graphics. Um, but yeah, recently I've been getting too many commissions and I cannot handle them all myself. And if I can provide these graphics for everyone and also um, help other budding science graphic designers become more established, I'm all up for it.
Wow, yeah. That's so cool. And oh, okay, so I guess going back to, kind of, or I guess, speaking of like these commissions and the early days of your freelancing when your friends would message you asking for graphics, how like if I'm, a PhD biologist or whatever, and I don't have a friend like you, how is it normally done? Is it a matter of like always contracting out a designer, or is a lot of this stuff being designed by sort of the researchers themselves and it just looks like crap? Or like how does that process usually go?
I would say that most scientists make their own figures for one of two reasons. One, they don't have money to commission someone. Or two, they don't know that they can get someone else to make their figures.
Right.
Um, because so what we try to do as science graphic designers is communicate a very complex research idea into something that more people can understand. A lot of the time, these are just more scientists. Of course, you can make graphics to communicate with the general public, but most of my commissions are to communicate research to other scientists in a
Oh,
similar
okay.
field. So you want someone that is also a scientist that is familiar with the publishing process or with conferences or has like at least a similar base level of understanding of a biological process, for example. Um, so in my mind, someone doing a PhD, a master's, they have an extremely valuable background or expertise because even if they are not in the exact same field as the scientist that is commissioning the graphic, they can kind of understand what the scientist wants. It's only a matter of learning the um, the graphic design side of things. But the good thing is that I've met so many scientists that really love making graphics. So they have some base understanding of what to do to create a good graphic. And also another thing is that scientists in general do not get training on how to make graphics, which I think is kind of absurd because, as I previously said, we all have to make figures, posters, presentations, etc., but no one teaches us how to make them. So we do our best.
Right.
So yeah, unless there's someone out there that has the knowledge of the science aspect and the graphic design aspect, um, that can help you, then you just do what you can.
Yeah. So you having a background in biology and
Mhm.
paleontology, that's most of the work you get. Like you do you ever get commissions from people who are like in chemistry or physics or something? And I guess do you get those types of commissions and do you say yes or do you say, "Oh, that's not what I do?"
I do get them from time to time, and I say yes, almost always, unless I'm really not qualified. But basically, what I like doing is I like having a Zoom call with the researcher, and I ask them to explain to me what on earth they're trying to communicate with their graphic. So if they are forced to explain to me what that is in the simplest of terms, then it's fine. I can make a graphic out of it,
Right.
because we usually start with a draft that they make, and then they explain it to me. And now that I understand that, then we can make it nicer, right? But yeah, I would say most of my commissions are in the life sciences area, but I've definitely gotten commissions from psychologists, from physicists, even people outside of academia as well.
Hmm. What software do you use mostly? Like, is it mostly Illustrator, or do you use some other more like I don't know, funky science related software?
Um, I usually, my go-to software is Illustrator, definitely. Um, sometimes I use like InDesign or something similar. I guess it depends on the graphic. If there is someone that needs help with data visualization, and then they send me like an Excel file with their data, then I use R, which is
Oh my God, R.
like coding, like producing plots and stuff. That's complicated sometimes.
Yeah. Wow, you
I don't
use
like it very
R.
much.
That's amazing. R like gives me I mean that just hearing that like triggers me. Like I had to use R. I studied math in my undergrad. So we had like statistics courses. And R is the worst thing ever. It's like this most horrible, like unusable software. Is it still like that? Or is it like, I mean, my memory of R is that it was basically just a nightmare to use,
I think that I'm just like used to it by
I
now
guess. Yeah.
because I had to use it, since my master's and PhD to analyze data. But my problem back then is that it would stress me out so much that I couldn't get a figure to look nice when using R. Um, I can make them look slightly better now, but a lot of the time I just end up um saving it as a PDF and then opening it in Illustrator, and then I can modify things by hand
Right. Got it.
to make them look exactly what I want them to look like. I know that you can, if you're very good at art, you can produce a very beautiful figure
Oh, well.
without having to do any more editing in Illustrator. But I'm not that good at art, so I do what I can.
Um, one topic I wanted to bring up because I've seen you um, post a few like sort of articles on your blog about accessibility. I thought it was really interesting because I feel like it's got to be especially important in education because it's it's especially important that like everybody can access this stuff the same. Well, one thing I actually saw that I didn't even know existed was previewing your work for people with like different kinds of color blindness. There's actually like a setting in Adobe in Illustrator where you can preview to see what this would look like with different kinds of color blindness. Anyway, that's kind of just a side note, but I thought that was fascinating. I didn't know you could do that. But yeah, I guess like what are your thoughts on accessibility in graphic design specifically like for science?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So, in my mind, it is very clear that the way we communicate science has to be accessible. The A science is meant to be communicated. One of our jobs as researchers is to communicate whatever our findings are effectively. If, however we communicate our research is not accessible, then that just means we are not communicating effectively, because we're effectively cutting out a chunk of the population just because they happen to have some type of disability. So that, that to me is unthinkable that you would willingly be doing this. Of course, a lot of the time, the way science is communicated, if it's not accessible, it's not because people are going out of their way to make it inaccessible. It's more that we haven't been taught how to make it accessible. And if they don't teach us how to design graphics, they're definitely not going to teach us how to make those graphics accessible.
Right.
So I think it's just a lack of training for scientists. And really, to make science graphics accessible, it's not that hard. You just have to know what you're doing. So yeah, like you say, in my blog I talk about this. I've been trying to read about it as much as I can, because I want the graphics that I produce to be as inclusive as possible, right? So a lot of the time it's just, like you mentioned color blindness, right? Scientists use graphs, plots, whatever, all of the time. We color code things all of the time. If you go to that setting in Illustrator that emulates how a person with color blindness would see your graph, if you're not using the right colors, all the meaning in your plot can be lost like this, just because you chose the wrong colors. And changing a color in the plot is something that can be done super quickly. You just need to be thinking about these considerations from the start. Because if you go ahead and make a poster or make an infographic or something very complex, and then you preview it at the end with a colorblind emulator, and you realize that it's not accessible at all, you're going to have to go back and redo it. And in the best of cases, you just change the colors and that's it. But what if your entire idea is wrong just because you didn't think about the accessibility considerations at the start, and now you have to redraft the whole thing, try to communicate it in a different way so that it's accessible to most people, So yeah, I think that we need to advocate for these accessibility considerations to be part of, everyone's knowledge as scientists. Because, if we don't do it, like, who is going to do it?
I appreciate you speaking on that topic. I think it's an important one, and I think it's something that's becoming more and more talked about, but still probably is not as common knowledge as it should be, and certainly, like you were saying, not something that's always taught. So just something to be aware of, and I think also it's usually not that difficult. It's just a question of just being aware of it, and if you can take it into consideration, it's not necessarily going to cause you a bunch of extra work.
Yeah, exactly. And like what I always like to say is that making your work accessible is not going to make it look bad. If anything, your work might end up looking even better because you're using more contrasting colors. You're, I don't know, like adding clarifying notes, or like a bunch of accessibility considerations just make your work look better. It's just like a win-win.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, I think I think I've gone through my questions. Thanks for doing this. This was super fun.
Yeah, of course. No, I've had a really nice time talking with you.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of the Graphic Design is Fun podcast. If you want to support the show, you can share it with your friends, share it with your coworkers. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. You can leave a 5-star review. Any of those things helps a ton. Really appreciate it. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next one. Oh, and you can follow on Instagram at Graphic Design is Fun. Yeah.